Hello, a very, very warm welcome to the launch of the Global Research and Action Network for a new eco-social contract. We're here in Bonn, hosted by the United Nations Research Institute for Social Development and the Green Economy Coalition. My name is Oliver Greenfield, and I'm the convener of the Green Economy Coalition. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege to have you here with us joining. I have a moderator's challenge. I have probably over 25 people to introduce to you, already showing a huge amount of energy and excitement about what we're launching today. But this today is really an invitation for you to join us, to think about things, doing things with us in partnership, collaboration, action and research. A couple of moments before I introduce the Deputy Mayor of Bonn and the panel, and then our newest members. A couple of minutes from me, briefly, just to set the scene. I think many of you will be watching the progress in COP. You may even be in COP in Glasgow. COP26, COP26, 26 of them so far. And you may be filled with either hope or frustration, probably a bit of both. And you'll be thinking, how are we going to make sure we stay safe and secure? What is it that's really going to push the ambition, deliver what we need to make sure this transition happens, but is also fair? What is it? Well, I would suggest to you in the last few years, we've seen the dial turn, largely because of the youth movements, but also some other citizen action movements, really making sure that the politicians feel the heat, feel the demand. That heat needs to be turned up even more, but it also needs to be proactively engaging with the transition. This is not a transition that needs to live just in commissions, it needs to live in communities. It must grow and develop and become behavior change, culture change. Because my contention to you is that politicians rarely lead, society demands, and politicians respond. Markets rarely lead, society demands, and markets respond. Finance rarely leads, markets, and finance respond to societal demand. So capturing societal demand and making it a joint partner in this transition. So an eco-social contract is about the relationship between people and power, and making sure that this is a transition which we do in partnership. We do at the speed and the aspiration of ordinary people. And we fundamentally address in this transition, which must happen and start and accelerate, some of the structural inequalities on gender, on race, on indigenous, on youth. We put that all into this mix, and we make sure this is a renewed relationship between power and people. That's so exciting. In the 20-odd years I've been working in this space, I've developed a nose for what's coming, and this is one of the most exciting moments that I have seen. Let us join together. Let's see what's working around the world. Let's learn from each other. Let's bring it together, and let's make sure that we make this a renewal of the new relationship between society and those that govern us. So that's enough from me just to start it. I'm going to now move into my moderator phase, where I've got to introduce a number of fabulous speakers for us, a short panel, and then our new members. But before I do that, it's a great privilege to have with us today the Deputy Mayor of Bonn, Mrs. Grbowy. I hope I've got that right. I'm sure there's many names in the 26 people I've got to introduce from around the world I'll get wrong, so my apologies in advance. Mrs. Grbowy is here representing Bonn, a fabulous city. If you've not visited it, I've been here just a few hours, but it's beautiful. And mayors have a very great privilege of bringing together people's well-being and people's livelihoods, but also their jobs and their quality of life. So it's a fabulous place in Bonn Symposium that we launched this here. And thank you very much, Mrs. Grbowy, for hosting us. Over to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Mr. Greenfield. My name is Melanie Grbowy, and I'm Deputy Mayor of Bonn. It is my pleasure to visit the Bonn UN campus for the first time on this eminent occasion. Bonn is a place with a unique culture of collaboration and networking across structures and disciplines. Today, a new network will enter the stage of sustainability. We live in an era of pressing social and ecological challenges. As the current discussions in Glasgow are showing, the climate action needed to avert essential threats to planet and mankind has to be based on cutting-edge research, and it must be social, just leaving no one behind. I commend the initiatives of the Global Research and Action Network for a new eco-social contract, for their vision to explore the promise of a new eco-social contract and thereby bringing both aspects together. Moreover, I am convinced that this new network will provide space for dialogue, debate, co-construction and action around the meaning and impact of a new eco-social contract, good practices for its design and mechanisms of its application. A warm welcome for those present here in Bonn, as well as those joining online for this network launch hosted by UNRISD and the Green Economy Coalition during the Bonn Symposium. I'm glad to hear that long-standing climate and social activists such as Kumi Naidoo from South Africa and Elisa Longkong from Chile took the time to join us today, along with many other pioneers around the world. By bringing together organizations and individuals from research and practice, advocacy, and policy decision-making communities working for social, climate, and environmental justice, the new network is set for Progressive Knowledge and Action Alliance. And let me say, a welcome addition to the sustainability networking landscape centered around the UN Bonn, featuring multidisciplinary networks like BION, the Bonn Alliance for Sustainability Research, the Bonn Network for Civil Protection and Disaster Management, the Bonn Climate Group, or the Bonn Water Network. As you will know, we are celebrating 25 years of UN Bonn this year. The presence of the UN and so many other key players in sustainability has imprinted our city, including our own sustainability strategy, valuing participation and equity as one of 6 work streams. Actually, our response to the climate emergency is a participatory, citizen-driven process towards climate neutrality in 2035 latest. Should you be interested in what Bonn does, I recommend browsing our voluntary local review of 2019. Should you be looking for new partners, you will find plenty, from local to global, in particular in the large field of academia, but also among the many non-governmental organizations in Bonn working in the fields of development and environment. This said, let me thank again UNRISD and the Green Economy Coalition for their initiative. Bonn is very proud to see a new network evolve as part of the 25th anniversary of UN Bonn. And let me end with my best wishes for the work of the Global Research and Action Network for a new eco-social contract. I'm looking forward to learn and to see what the new network will do and how it will show us how to link up for a greener and fairer future for us and for future generations. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Mrs. Grabowski. Thank you also for doing it in English. I am very aware of everybody speaking in English for my lone benefit, but thank you for that. Thank you very much. A great welcome, and it is a privilege to be here in your beautiful city. Okay, I'm now going to start to introduce our panel. In the panel today, we've got a short panel, but we shall hear from Paul Ladd of the United Nations Research Institute for Social Development, who will explain why there is a need for this eco-social contract. We'll then join Kumi Naidoo, who's, I think, still in Glasgow, so we hope the technology works. Kumi Naidoo, ex-Amnesty, ex-Greenpeace, a real social activist from South Africa, who will talk about the role of social movements as we bring more and more people into this network. We will hear from Rhoda Boateng from Ghana about the perspectives of the trade union movement. a real leader in this agenda. We will hear from Maristela Svampa from Argentina, who will present visions of from the South. And then we'll hear from Elisa Loncon from Chile, who will talk about a national eco-social contract in the making, their new Chilean constitution. So a range of visions, a range of stakeholders involved in that discussion, and really hope to start to bring this term alive for you through their experience and their inputs. But first, it is the Green Economy Coalition with UNRIST who have started to build this network together. So it is with great privilege that I introduce Paul Ladd from UNRIST. Paul.
Thank you, Oliver. UNRIST is very excited today to launch with the Green Economy Coalition this global research and action network for a new eco-social contract. People around the world, activists, campaigners, are already fighting for and building these new eco-social contracts. We've seen energetic evidence of that in Glasgow. They're doing so partly because the old social contracts, the agreements between societies and states, between governments and the governed, have broken down. And they're doing so because they are angry and concerned about the state of the world. They see growing fractures and inequalities, with huge amassed wealth sitting alongside entrenched poverty. They see climate and environmental destruction, threatening the well-being and safety of future generations and entire territories. They see polarization and a backlash against equality and human rights. And they've seen a global COVID pandemic that's exacerbated inequalities and exposed a lack of solidarity between countries. But campaigners for social justice and for environmental justice are increasingly working together with NGOs, with academics, with trade unions and business sometimes too, to push governments to rewrite the rules. The new eco-social contracts they're writing are being built from the ground up in different countries and communities, in different economic and social sectors. They are pushing to ensure that we change our economics so that our day-to-day consumption, production, and trade supports people and planet and doesn't undermine them. They're aiming for more inclusive societies, respect for nature, gender justice, and a fairer fiscal contract that means we all pay fairly for our common good. Now, the purpose of this network for me is to learn from these campaigns all around the world, which strategies are working, which political coalitions are working, how is legislation being rewritten and budgets and investments reoriented. By collecting experiences in this network through analysis of both successes and failures, and through sharing that knowledge, hopefully we can bend the arc of justice more quickly towards social and environmental justice. So thank you for joining us, and please do contribute to this network.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. Absolutely super. And at every innovative, creative, new endeavor, there has to be a partnership. And so the Green Economy Coalition is privileged to work with UN and Paul, and it's fantastic. So let's move on to my friend Kumi. Kumi, who is hot, Kumi Naidu, who's I think you're still in Glasgow, Kumi, so hot from the press. How does it feel from there, and what your contribution about social movements and why this eco-social contract? Kumi, over to you.
Thank you, Oliver. Greetings, everybody. Let me start by telling you, if I were to ask you to guess which is the largest delegation at the COP in Glasgow, you might be tempted to guess that it's the UK government delegation because they're the host country. But the largest delegation is in fact the oil and gas industry, which has twice the number of delegates at the COP. It's quite an absurd situation. It's almost as if, if Alcoholics Anonymous was having a global conference and the largest delegation was the alcohol industry. However, the social movements are alive and well, and even though they are largely shut out of the COP, there has been a level of energy and purposefulness and strategy that within the context of us anticipating that we will not get the deal that we want at the COP26, people are already beginning to plot to fight another day. And it is in that context that this network to push for an eco-social contract, a social contract that balances the imperatives of equity and sustainability, is critically needed, and one that will be welcomed by many of the social movements here in Glasgow. It's important to recognize that when the global financial crisis came to its end in its worst form, that the approach of those in power was all about system protection, system maintenance, and system recovery. When what was needed then and what is urgently needed now is system innovation, system redesign, and system transformation. When we look at the challenges that we face right now, we need to be saying it cannot be business as usual, it cannot be government as usual, but we also must say it cannot be activism as usual as well. We have to recognize that humanity finds itself in the most crucial decade in humanity's history. What we choose to do in the next 10 years and how much of change we can push for in the next decade will determine what future we have or whether we will have a future at all. And I don't believe that is overstating the case. Therefore, it is important that we look at whether, in fact, we in civil society, in social movements, and the world of activism itself is as equipped as we need to be for the struggles that lie ahead. And I want to say that this moment is not one for us to be shy, to embrace, for example, what Albert Einstein once said when he said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting to get different results. This is a time for us to ask such questions as, what should we start doing that we're not doing? What should we stop doing that we are doing? What should we continue doing, but maybe do it in a very different way? And one of the main things that we have to recognize is that we are making a very crucial mistake when we focus so much on what people don't have. When we focus on how people are excluded, marginalized, oppressed, repressed, and so on, which we have to be our starting point. But if we don't balance that with saying that notwithstanding all the challenges that people face, that people still have agency. And unless we have a positive attitude about recognizing people's agency, we will not succeed in fixing a big problem that we have, which is far too many people who should be key players in the struggle to redesign the world are left being spectators, being unaware of what is happening. I'm hoping the share screen facility will work. And, oh, it hasn't been enabled. Can folks in Bonn please put it up for me, please? While we try to sort out the technology, we have to recognize that there are multiple capabilities that people have, and we need to put people at the center of our deliberations. I've identified 4 capabilities that we need to harness, and you need to read each of the circles in each of those 4 quadrants, starting in the center. So on the top left, harnessing our autonomy. People have power as citizens and voters. Even though we know that many of our election systems now are highly flawed, I would make the plea that we cannot give up that terrain of struggle. People have power as enforcers of transparency and accountability. People have power as shapers of our own destiny in terms of social movements, NGOs, trade unions, and so on. And people also have power as volunteers taking private action for public good. When we look at harnessing our creative participation, people have power as custodians of ancient wisdom, as shapers of values, ethics, and beliefs, and makers of culture and all forms of art. When we look at the bottom right-hand corner in terms of harnessing our consumption, people have power as consumers of energy, food, and everything else. And of course, sadly, as also consumers of disinformation and as well as information. On the top right-hand corner, people have power as owners of capital and assets, holders of bank accounts, holders of insurance policies, pensions, and so on. And one of the most exciting things happening here in COP is people talking about how do we make our money work for the advancement of our struggles. Now, I want to close by raising a challenge for all of us. We have to ensure that we harness the energies that are out there in a way that we don't intellectualize the work that we are planning to do in terms of the eco-social contract. In fact, I think our first challenge to the network that I would like to throw is how do we find a language that doesn't talk about the eco-social contract when we take it out into the public. We have to find a set of words that resonates with ordinary people, and that we are able to do everything to make sure what we are doing is not too much looking upward. So I conclude by saying, for this to be successful, we need to make sure that our gaze is correct. For far too long, we always gaze to those with power, appealing to them and telling them repeatedly what they already know. And they tick off a box saying civil society consulted, and sometimes we tick off a box saying government lobbied. But if we are to make the eco-social contract, the promise behind it, a reality, then we need to make sure that our gaze is primarily to where people are, and ensure that those of us that have more skills are transferring those skills and creating an enabling environment for the immense power that resides amongst ordinary people across the world to be honest, to ensure that we can build a world where we have a social contract in place, where our governments balance the imperative of equity and the imperative of sustainability. Dankeschön. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kumi, and set a challenge which we will co-create with all of our members and future members. That sense of speaking to people where they're at and finding that collective agency to redesign our system. We need better language than that. Green must be fair, fair must be green, me to we. How are we going to bring people together so that we really push this movement forward at pace and fairness? Okay, I'm going to bring in a pre-recording from Maristela Svampa, and we're going to hear quickly, I'll just go straight to her. Maristela.
Thank you for this invitation. Thank you to the organizer for this possibility to talk about the eco-social and intercultural pact from the South. The Eco-Social Pact from the South is a proposal promoted by activist, intellectual, and social organizations from Latin America, from countries such as Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia, Ecuador, Colombia, Peru, and Mexico. The Eco-Social Pact is a collective platform that invites to build hopeful social imaginaries, agree on a shared path of transformation, and a basis for struggles in the most diverse area of our society. The Eco-Social Pact has 4 axes. First, care paradigm. Second, is not only the Green New Deal, the Eco-Social Pact has a holistic vision. He proposed the articulation between social justice and environmental justice. Third, we propose a comprehensive socio-ecological transition, not only energy, but also food production and consumption. Fourth, we propose the defense of democracy and autonomy in terms of ethnic and gender justice. Far from being an abstract proposal, the Eco-Social Pact is connected with struggles, with the processes of re-existence and the concepts elaborated and disseminated in the recent decades in the South, especially in Latin America, by socio-environmental movements. Of course, we have a dialogue with other proposals like the Green New Deal, but the Eco-Social Pact rejects that Latin America continue to be spoken by the North, especially when it's come to eco-social transition proposals. In the several versions of the Green New Deal, there is no place for the ecological debt, and on some occasions, they don't go beyond the decarbonization of societies. We consider too the pandemic, we put a care paradigm on the agenda. We need to transform the relationship between society and nature. We need to overcome the dualistic and anthropocentric paradigm to replace with a relational paradigm which places interdependence and care at the center. The pandemic made visible the importance of care in its multiple dimensions. On the one hand, we talk in terms of caring for territories, life cycles, and ecosystems. On the other hand, we talk about care as a right. We have to think about policies through comprehensive care systems in order to reduce, to eliminate the gender gap. In the South, we need to build post-extractivist economies and societies. We need a radical socio-ecological transition to move away progressively from dependence on oil, coal and gas, mining, deforestation, and large-scale monocrops or monoculture. We need to shift to renewable energy systems that should be a decentralized, decommodified, and democratic energy system. We have to prioritize food sovereignty. Latin America is the region with the higher levels of land concentration in the world. The dominant agribusiness model, which requires little labor, depends on agrochemicals, and destroys native forests and produces fodder for livestock, is increasingly questioned due to its concentration, unsustainability, and its health impacts. So, the priority must be to develop policies aimed at land redistribution, access to water, and sweeping reform of agrarian policies, moving away from industrial agriculture for export. Not impossible. For example, agroecology is developing in almost all the countries of the region. Finally, we have to recover the political imagination. We should fight against the dystopic narratives that paralyze political imagination. We have to create new alliances, mobilize from below to contribute to cultural and political consensus. Not enough to support the local experience now. We need to build bridges in order to create global and national programs of transition, but just transition. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Maristela. Fantastic to see Eco-Social Pact there in South America, really giving us a great deal to learn from. And this is critical for us, that this becomes regionally relevant, regionally rooted, locally and nationally rooted, but yet we also connect and learn from each other. So we already will benefit extraordinarily well from Maristela and her network's work, and look forward to taking that forward for global solidarity. Okay, I'm now going to move to Rhoda Boateng from Ghana, and we can hear the perspectives of the trade unions. Rhoda, lovely to have you with us.
Thank you very much, and I'm delighted to be here connecting from Glasgow this afternoon. And so I must say I'm stuck in a hotel lobby, and I'm really hoping that there's not so much distractions in the background. But comrades, I just would like to start off by saying that we all know that the global economic model has failed woefully, especially for working people. And that the power and greed of huge global corporations that have been captured by governments, that have captured governments which are acting against the rights and security of their own workers is really what we're seeing everywhere. And so whether you're a worker in the South or worker in the North, we know that there is huge exploitations, but even worse for workers who find themselves in the South, where you have huge high levels of informality. And we must note that most countries in the South record as high up as 80% of workers in the informal sector, which is predominantly characterized by very insecure forms of work, very low levels of income, etc. And so indeed, the global architecture has not been very favorable to working people generally, but even worse for working people in the South. And there is no doubt that the current social contract is clearly broken. We also see exploitation of workers in global supply chains, with more than 60% of global trade dependent on global supply chain contracts, which is simply exacerbating inequality, and we would say inequality by design, with an economic model based on low wages, insecure, and often unsafe types of jobs. There's also different, we're seeing the changing nature of work and new forms of work that is also oftentimes taking away protection of labor rights that has actually been fought and waged for workers for a long time now. And these would be example of platform workers, etc. And so indeed the current social contract, as it were, is really not to the benefit, or leaves mainly working people very disadvantaged. And this is predominantly even worse in the global South. So as the ITUC, as representatives of labor, we really do acknowledge that there is a need for us to really push for a new social contract. And it is in this regard that we find this initiative very laudable, and are indeed very happy to be part of this, and look forward to seeing how we can really move forward with meeting the objectives of this, which indeed we know is not going to be an easy task. Of course, we all know that change is one thing that is very difficult, and indeed, whenever there is the need to change, you would always find obstacles and several challenges. But we do hope that with a kind of collaboration and kind of partnerships that we're bringing on board, we would be able to continue to persevere, to be able to address some of these systemic changes, and to really be able to bring about the change that we want to see, what we have termed the new eco-social contract. And so at the level of ITUC as labor, we have 5 key demands, which we are pushing forward, which we want to see when we talk about a new social contract. And I'll just quickly want to just go through these 5 key demands. One being that we want to see the creation of climate-friendly jobs. And here we're talking about green jobs, but jobs with a just transition. Of course, we've all acknowledged, or we all do accept, that there's a need for us to transform our economies, there's a need for us to transform our societies. But then what is key for us is that the transformation should ensure that the most deprived and the most disadvantaged population is not impacted negatively. And here we are talking about workers, we're talking about communities. And so how do we ensure that in transforming our economies, these marginalized populations will not be affected, but would indeed be able to benefit in the changes and in the new economies and new societies that we are shaping. We are also calling for the rights of workers. And so regardless of their employment arrangements, whether it's informal workers, whether it's formal workers, whether it's workers found in new and emerging economies and new forms of employment, we are calling for the rights and the protection of these workers to fulfill the promise of the ILO Centenary Declaration with its labor protection clause. For us, most critical is the need for us to continue to push for a universal social protection with establishment of a social protection fund. And we're saying that it is so important for us to continue to push for this, because it's important that we do have in place a system that would support countries that are the least industrialized countries, countries that are least wealthy, to be able to really provide a kind of social protection interventions and provisions for their populations. The fourth demand is then equality. We all know that the current economic system or the current contracts that we have hasn't really served many. And there are several levels of the population that actually find themselves excluded in various forms. And so equality should be at the heart of this agenda. We should try to we should move forward and work towards ending all forms of discrimination, whether it's race, whether it's gender, to ensure that all people can share in prosperity and that the appalling concentration of wealth in the hands of a few at the expense of the many is totally undone. Lastly, linked to equality would be inclusion. How are we going to ensure that everyone actually partakes or takes part or has stakes in what's in the benefits of society and the profits of society, so to speak. And so we really want to combat the growing power of monopolies, ensure that developing countries can actually develop their economies and guarantee tax systems that provide the income vital for governments to meet the needs of people and the planet. And so here we're talking about equality, we're talking about inclusion, whilst we are moving forward with mitigating the effects of climate change, etc. It is so important for us to continue to push forward with adaptation and trying to build the resilience of countries that need this. And this is what we mean by inclusion. So a just transition that responds to the needs, the specific needs and the differentiated needs of different people, different sectors of the economy, as well as different countries. And indeed, we do think that this is really achievable if we really all do commit to this. And this is why we think that this new eco-social contract that is being pushed forward and shaped here is something that really we all need to commit to fully. And we at the ITUC and the labor movement really commit to this and look forward to seeing how we can work together to really achieve this. Thank you so much.
Rhoda, thank you very, very much indeed. And we see some of the contours of this new eco-social contract already start to emerge. The idea of inclusion, the process of inclusion, decent jobs, social protection, addressing inequalities. They're really central ideas to this that we will want to take forward in partnership and collaboration. So thank you very much for joining with us. I'm now delighted to bring in Elisa Loncon Antilio from Chile. Chile is actually moving down to creating its own constitution based very similarly on some of these ideas. So really a vision of what's emerging, and it's a privilege to have you join us. Over to you, Elisa.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much to all of you. For me, it's a very important speech to talk with you about how do we want to live well together in a new eco-social contract organized by United Nations Research Institute for Social Development. Thank you for inviting me to stay here. I want to say hello in my mother tongue, which is Mapudungun. Mari Mari Pulamien, Mari Mari Pompuche. That is to say, hello everybody, hello all my brothers from different nations. In my language, which is Mapudungun, which means language of the land in the Mapuche culture and inside Mapuche people. For me, it's very important to speak about the issue related with the care of Mother Earth or Mother Nature, and also talk about good living. As you well know, today, it is the urgently to rethink together about a new eco-social pact at the global level to care the nature, or in other words, about how to live together as people connected with the environment and biodiversity. These topics represent for me and for the people to whom I belong a principle that we have in our culture. And we know as Itofil Munyen and Khmer Munyen. Itofil Munyen means in my language the biodiversity, and Khmer Munyen means good living. As you know, I was educated as Mapuche. I was educated also by the nature. I grew up in an indigenous identity. So for as all of my children in my culture, we valued the nature. So the knowledge that we have belong to the culture and also belong to the mother earth. I consider it's important to tell you about that topic of the Mapuche values, connected with the environment and connected with nature. For us, mountains, forests, rivers are living beings. They are born, they live, have health, independent from human, but we are connected with them spiritually. So we need the river, we need the mountain to have our good life. Today, all of them are in danger because of human action, because of states and governments' action, economical model that destroy for centuries in the name of progress. For this reason, I think that is very important to speak all together how to protect our mother nature. So this is my topic. This is my main greeting and my knowledge to share with you. Invite all of you to think about values, human values connected with the nature, connected with our mother. Our mother today it is in dangerous. So as
Hast du denn
Mapuche,
geklingelt?
for us,
Oder
that
kein
is very
aufgemacht?
important. Thank you very much.
Das ist aber merkwürdig, da sollte eigentlich noch jemand.
Elisa, that's been a privilege to have you join us. Thank you very, very much indeed. I am so excited to learn about the wisdom that we have lost, or many parts of the world have lost, and to recapture it and put that central to our conversations. A wisdom of understanding our relationship with nature and our dependency on nature, and re-establishing that as the central premise of rejuvenating not only our relationship with nature, but ourselves. So it's a privilege to have you join us. I am now going to draw to close the panel. It has been a fabulous panel. I am going to start to introduce very, very quickly. I have to be almost a little bit rude to, I think that we've got about 11 or 12 people that have joined the network already who wanted to say very briefly who they are and what their motivation was. So unapologetically to you out there in the audience, I'm going to spin through to give you a flavor of some of the institutions and organizations and individuals that have already, in the very short window that we've had this thing up and running, already showing some energy and passion towards helping us co-create, develop, learn, and develop action. So it is with that that I believe I'm going to Jakob Reiner first. Have I got that right? Yes, I believe I have. Or have I got that wrong? Please correct me. Jakob. Yeah, please come in. Jakob. Thank you.
So, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear Dr. Ladd, dear Isabel. It's a great honor and pleasure for me to be here with you at this launch event of the Ecosocial Contract Network. I'm representing the Bonn Alliance for Sustainability Research. It's a group of research and education institutes based here in Bonn, joining forces around the themes of sustainability. While the Bonn Alliance can't be a formal member of the network, since it is an alliance itself, it should be the individual institutions. I'm sure there is plenty of work we can do with each other. And Isabel, we have already started since you arrived in Bonn here to cooperate even in times of COVID. We have started a new program, Sustainability Looking Beyond 2030 at the Alliance, and I'm sure this is a very nice platform and channel for cooperation. When I looked into the concept note of the ecosocial contracts, you have addressed 7 ways to be different from what we did so far. And I've been intrigued by one, contracting nature. And I've asked myself naively, who is contracting with whom? Who is negotiating for nature? And I think different cultures have given very different answers to these questions, depending on whether they are in north, south, east, west, through times and also within societies. These answers have been different. And if the network can be a platform to give voices to these different approaches, to these different answers civilizations have give, and to cross-fertilize. This is what I'm really intrigued about. And this is why I'm saying again, I'm delighted and honored to be part of the network. Congratulations to its start and best wishes for a good start, and happy to see you soon.
Jakob, thank you very much. We should probably do a word cloud of all the co-creation and things that resonate. Cross-fertilization, love that. That's precisely the sort of thing that we need to be doing with this network, learning from each other, accelerating and growing something quickly that really hits the moment. I'm now going to go to Lucy Malenke from the International Indigenous Women. Lucy, very welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this wonderful meeting. Thank you very much, and thank you for the wonderful meeting. I'm also in Glasgow, so I'm taking it in trying to take it in a quiet place like my sister from Ghana. And I really want to say we are really privileged as Indigenous Women, International Indigenous Women Forum, to join and to be able to work together with you. And we look forward for that great learning, especially we have to learn from each other. And when we look at it, how do we want to live well together? I think my sister from Chile was trying to bring this aspect of where Indigenous people look at life holistically. We look at the way we work with different people in a holistic way, in working together and collectively together. And of course, thinking very much about our, human rights perspective in terms of looking at different things. This particular venture that we are in, research, is very important for us. And even though we may not go breaking down the social contract as much as the others who have just spoken have already explained, I think it's very important because for us Indigenous women, we've been doing quite a lot of advocacy, a lot of research in different areas. And this particular network is going to help us to be able to improve and enhance our capacity in terms of looking at different research that is going to be done and that we are going to do, so that we can all be able to share and work together and enhance our capacity in terms of knowing where that data is going to go, or what are the issues that come up in different ways. And this is because when we look at Indigenous people, say people, they don't have capacity, we don't know, we don't have clear data about them. And it's a right time to really include them in everything that we want to do. We are saying we want to be included. We want to be on the table. We want to be in discussion. We want also to make sure that it's a participatory approach that can be undertaken. Listening to from the beginning, there are quite some very important issues that we can all be able to work together, and also what Indigenous women can be also able to input in. So we are looking at it, when we look at the green economy, the coalition, I think this is a wonderful thing, because as our lives evolve through the environment, through our mother nature. How do we live in harmony with nature? And how can we make things move correctly? I think that's one of the key things that we want to look at. And we are committed to be able to start working with all of you and see what we can bring the voices and bring the information of our constituency and work with the rest of the people. Because working and how to be able to succeed, we have to all work together, integrate and network, mainstream our activities, and see how we can be able to move forward as a global citizen globally, wherever we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy. It's a privilege to have you contribute and sharing, working together holistically. I know that our own work for many years has been based on the fact that economists don't necessarily talk enough to scientists, and politicians largely talk to economists, not scientists. And that's where the Green Economy Coalition came from. But we need to broaden that sense of working together, learning from each other, sharing together. And holistic is something that's where wisdom flows, rather than the specialties which denies us some bigger picture perspectives. And so it's a privilege to have you with us. And building bridges is exactly what the next person I want to bring in, Rajesh Jofish from Bridging Ventures. Rajesh, I guess you're both also in COP. Great that you could be with us. Over.
Hi, everybody, and greetings. Thank you so much for having us with you and for the privilege of being part of this network and this effort. We cannot heal a broken system without the human spirit of solidarity. And one of the things that we're trying to do here at Bridging Ventures is work together with many of you to create space to organize, but to recognize that we have less time than we perhaps thought we did to create the transformations necessary if we look at the science, and that we are in a decisive decade where the level of emissions that we have left to emit are quite low, and where we also need it to be a fair and a fast transition. And therefore, we need to think about how do we not just look at the role of accountability and confrontation and bottom-up action, but also how do we ensure that we transcend some of our tactics and look at ways of sitting together at a table. And maybe we need a new table that we need to build together, where we can negotiate a new social contract, one which puts people and planet at the center, but one which also speaks truth and brings values of reconciliation and unity and compassion into the conversation. And we're just delighted to have the ability to work closely with the Green Economy Coalition and to serve in any capacity to support the intelligent convening that is going on here, the thought leadership that is being brokered, and the efforts to mobilize resources that will be needed to mobilize across all of our constituencies as we move into the next year. And just to finish on that note, 2022 is going to be a critical year, and in a way we're just kicking things off here at COP26. It has in some ways been a very exclusive meeting, as Kumi has said. We're hoping that we see something quite different in Egypt next year, but we also have to move beyond meetings. And next year marks 30 years of meetings since Rio Plus 30, the Rio meetings that happened, where the first UN framework conventions were created. It also marks halfway to the Sustainable Development Goals, the centenary of the ILO, so many milestones coming together that connect our movements that perhaps we need to think about as a movement of movements. How do we connect our struggles, but at the same time design a process that delivers on this vision of a new social contract that so many of you and the Secretary General and others are really calling for, to enable us to deal with both the inequality and the climate agenda at the same time, recognizing that they're two sides of the same coin. So I hope we can all pull together and that we can find ways. It's amazing to see that there's more people in this room on Zoom than a conversation I just came from in the New York Times, which was very beautifully arranged with forests and plants, but had a much smaller participation. So it seems like the energy is very much in this room, and delighted that we can all work together to take it forward. I'm here in Strathclyde University at a small students' union, which is organized, and we also managed to attract some energy here. President Obama came to hold a roundtable with some young leaders. So it seems that our new forms of organizing are definitely getting the attention of people, and many universities and other actors all need to be working together with us. And we really need to start looking at the role of investors, artists, educators, many different groups, and bridge these ventures to solve these problems, which can only be solved together and not alone. Thank you to the coalition. Thank you, Oliver and Najma, for all of your hard work. And thank you for inviting us to be part of this process.
Thank you very much, Rajesh. And I got too many thoughts in there, probably for me to remember them all. But fortunately, we're recording this. But connecting our struggles and building a new table, I think that's a very good metaphor. Building a new table. Okay, so now I'm going to bring in Silke Stab from the UN Women. Silke, over to you.
Thank you, and hello everyone. My name is Silke Stab. I represent UN Women, the UN Agency for Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment. I want to thank you very much and congratulate you for organizing this launch event. I think it's a huge success. I'm really impressed by all the individuals and organizations you've brought together, and it's been really great to hear from everyone so far. At UN Women, we've recently launched a report entitled Beyond COVID-19, a Feminist Plan for Sustainability and Social Justice, which is our main motivation as well for joining this coalition, because in it, we've developed and put forth the idea of a feminist social contract. Why feminist? Building kind of on the evidence from the pandemic, that has revealed, as Paul Ladd also already pointed out, current social contracts are profoundly fractured. And one of the main problems we see is that they systematically fail to value, nourish, and invest in what's essential. And women have felt this failure very acutely during the pandemic, as the majority of workers staffing hospitals, health centers, and long-term care facilities, as default unpaid caregivers in families and communities, and as the majority of those who lost their jobs and livelihoods, often with nothing to fall back on. And much of this is true for the climate crisis as well. So we're really looking forward to working with you to bring a feminist lens to the new social contract and look at the implications that this has both for policy, the what of a social contract, and the politics, the how. In terms of the what, we believe that unlike many of their predecessors, new social contracts must really go beyond mediating only between workers and capital, states and markets, and acknowledge the important role of families and communities. And this requires a policy shift towards the provision of collective goods and services that ensure adequate care for both people and planet, an idea that already many others in this forum have referred to. In terms of the how, we believe that new social contracts must deliberately be aimed at redressing historical injustices and shifting gender power relations, including by bringing marginalized groups squarely into decision-making processes. And I think the other thing I've heard in previous interventions, and that comes through very strongly, is the need to strengthen and keep on building alliances between progressive actors, trade union movements, indigenous movements, climate justice, racial justice, and feminist movements. So we're very excited to join this network and look forward to working with partners on research and advocacy as we seek to deepen our understanding and engagement with the social contract. Thanks very much.
Silke, very much. Thank you, Silke. I am getting a little bit nervous as the moderator of how many more people I have got to bring in and make sure that their energies and enthusiasms are shared. So if you're coming up, please try and keep this to 2 minutes, just to give your perspective, who you're from, where you're doing, or else I might miss a few people off the end, which would be awful. But I really do feel that's challenging because Rory's traveled all the way here and he's in Bonn with us. So Rory Truell from the International Federation of Social Workers. Over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Oliver. Greetings to the audience, greetings to the other panelists and speakers on this inspiring and important global event. It's a pleasure for me to represent the International Federation of Social Workers. IFSW is the global body for the social work profession. Many of you may know that social workers worldwide are deeply involved in the complexities of social development and ensuring that people are able to play a leadership role in their own lives. Social work expertise is involving building contexts of solidarity and diversity, finding common goals and enabling people to lead in their own development. We are delighted to be joining this network. We see it as critically important in our work and for everybody in the world and for our sustainability. It's built on, joining this network is built on years of work working alongside UNRWA and other United Nations agencies. And we're particularly also excited about a parallel development with UNRWA that is involving many of you and hopefully all of us, which is the new a Global People Summit called Co-Building New Eco-Social World, Leaving No One Behind. This initiative and both initiatives that we're addressing today are involving partners across the world from diverse backgrounds representing hundreds of millions of people, as together we are saying we must move forward out of this pandemic with values and practices and policies that leave no one behind. Our ambition is to make sure that a conversation happens on every street corner where people can contribute to this Global People Summit and through that to this network we're celebrating today. So it's wonderful to be with you. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you, Rory. Global People Summit, that's something we have to make sure we're involved with. So thank you very much, Rory. So straight away over to Mandeep Tiwana from Civicus, one of our great partners. Mandeep.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted on behalf of Global Civil Society Alliance Civicus to join this conversation. Any conversation on creating greener, fairer, and more equal societies essentially should be grounded in a human rights approach, and we hope that the work going forward takes into account a very strong human rights approach. The human rights pillar of the United Nations is often overlooked, and as we know that of all the struggles in the modern world, they have been driven by people's mobilizations, driven by the exercise of human rights, whether it's struggles for decolonization, whether it's struggles for civil rights and racial justice, whether it's struggles for gender equity, whether it's struggles for nuclear disarmament, whether there's struggles for highlighting inequality in our societies, or on highlighting the climate emergency. These have been driven by people's mobilizations. Thus, we need to ensure that the work that we do enables the exercise of the freedoms of expression, association, and peaceful assembly. I am sorry to say that currently global conditions for the exercise of civil society rights are very challenging. Our research shows that only 3% of the world's population live in countries where these fundamental freedoms are adequately protected, despite them being part of international human rights law and the constitutions of most countries. So therefore, my appeal to this group would be, let's ground our work in a human rights-based approach. Let's reject any calls for cultural relativism of human rights, universal human rights norms, or any sorts of approach to carry out our work, taking into account national conditions which undermine universal values. In 2 years' time, the world will be celebrating 75 years of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is arguably the greatest and most groundbreaking global instrument of our times. And I hope the values that are enshrined there will continue to be incorporated in our work in creating greener, fairer social societies and on challenging inequities. Thank you.
Mandeep, we shall take that human rights approach, we shall expand it and develop it. I'm absolutely central, and the central point about people mobilization as well, absolutely great to have you with us on that journey. Now bringing in Amanda Shiruais from the University of Bremen. Amanda.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Paul Ladd and Isabel Kempf and UNRWA and all the colleagues for allowing us to be here and for convening this network. It's a delight to join you. When I heard that this network was being brought together, I was really keen to take part because of the clear relevance of this agenda and the momentum and urgency behind its development and implementation. I was also very inspired by the focus on translating research into practice, and I'd like to mention a few colleagues of mine at the University of Bremen and their work, which might contribute to the network and the agenda going forward. First, under the direction of Professor Dr. Karina Schmidt, I've had the privilege of working on a research project funded by the European Research Council that's focused on better understanding colonial legacies with respect to social protection. This work seeks to understand why social protection systems have produced more egalitarian and inclusive societies in some countries and reinforced inequities in others. And ideally, we'd like to understand moments of transformative change so that we can create institutions that don't lead to systematic disadvantages and also that don't leave anyone behind. There's also a collaborative research center at the University of Bremen that's focused on global dynamics of social policy. It's a large research center with very generous funding from the German Research Foundation. It has 80 researchers from over 15 countries and 4 regions, and it's focused largely on the introduction, diffusion, coverage, and generosity of social protection policies. It covers a number of areas from health to families, education, rural development, and also even armed conflict and its relationship to social policy development. The researchers are very keen to know more about the network and to make a contribution in any way going forward. Finally, during COVID, I've also had the opportunity to collaborate with colleagues at the Karolinska Institute and also at the World Health Organization Regional Office for Europe. And front and center in their agenda, much like this network, is really addressing inequities. They're deeply rooted even before the pandemic, but they've been exacerbated since and led to even new vulnerabilities. And the question at the heart of much of this work is really how we use the disruption from COVID-19 as an opportunity to build a better future and create transformations that help us to meet social objectives in a way that the planet can sustain through designing well-being economies and other initiatives that I'm sure the network will engage with. So thanks for letting me join you, and I look forward to the fruits of the network.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Okay, I'm going to go straight on to Pablo Vomero from Latin America. His contribution is in Spanish. Pablo.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Unris, for this invitation. I will speak in Spanish. That is one of our language here in our region. Ok, desde el Consejo Latinoamericano de Ciencias Sociales, CLACSO, adherimos y apoyamos la construcción de un nuevo pacto o contrato ecosocial como la base para forjar un mundo distinto basado en valores como la solidaridad, la cooperación, la igualdad, la justicia, la democracia, la libertad y los cuidados sociales y hacia la naturaleza y el ambiente. La pandemia visibilizó y profundizó dinámicas sociales preexistentes, entre las que se destacan las desigualdades sociales multidimensionales, las discriminaciones y segregaciones a diferentes grupos sociales, las violencias de diverso tipo y los modelos extractivistas y de agresión al ambiente y los ecosistemas. Asimismo, diversas movilizaciones sociales y resistencias continuaron expresándose como potencia para hacer oír sus voces y propuestas. Por eso, hoy emerge con fuerza y urgencia la necesidad de repensar nuestras sociedades en base a principios ecosociales y actuar de manera colaborativa y cooperativa para lograr las transformaciones que anhelamos. El buen vivir, el summa causai y el Ubuntu son lógicas sociales que pueden guiar esta construcción colectiva. Desde CLACSO, una red de más de 800 centros de investigación y formación en 55 países del mundo, con una perspectiva global situada desde América Latina y el Caribe en el marco del sur global, sostenemos los principios de la ciencia abierta y pública, la ciencia como bien común y derecho humano, incluyendo el acceso libre, gratuito y abierto al conocimiento colaborativo. Nuestro trabajo se basa también en el diálogo de saberes, el reconocimiento de las diversidades y pluralidades y la promoción de la lógica de redes entendidas como comunidades de conocimiento, aprendizaje y práctica. Desde el desarrollo de las ciencias sociales y las humanidades, tanto en la investigación como en la formación, como en la incidencia social y el trabajo con políticas públicas, ratificamos desde CLACSO nuestro compromiso con la construcción de un pacto social, ecológico, económico e intercultural que sea la base para el logro de sociedades más justas, democráticas, ecoambientalmente sostenibles e igualitarias. A partir de estos compromisos, cuentan con CLACSO para fortalecer esta red. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Pablo. And over straight away, and I'm really conscious of making sure you all get a chance to speak, Fazia Shaheen from Pathfinders. Fazia. Oh no, I apologize. I apologize. It's Tallulah Oni from Urban Better. Apologies, Tallulah.
No worries. And I apologize for the noise. Unlike my other colleagues at Glasgow, I haven't managed to find a quiet spot, so I hope you can hear me okay. It's a real privilege to be part of this discussion. When I set up Urban Better, it was set up in response to the largely nonsensical approach to urban development we're witnessing in the most rapidly urbanizing places. And my focus is largely on the African continent and the short-termism that we were taking to building our cities, really lacking a North Star. You know, it makes little sense to be contributing to air pollution as in the name of development when we know that influences everything from our cognitive impairment to all sorts of health. So we focus on increasing the supply of health from place and increasing the demand for healthy, sustainable places, and particularly centering this on youth. There are two aspects that I'm particularly looking forward to being part of this network. First is that having health has been central to well-being and balance with planetary boundaries. And the second is democratizing the data and supporting the data solidarity as a public good that is needed to support these healthy, sustainable goals. So this is going to be a largely transformational process that will take years. But I have a new acronym for years that we could embrace. Y for youth has to be centered on youth. E for equity, we've mentioned that already. A for adaptability and agility, we really have to be responsive to the needs and opportunities for transformative change. R for rights-based, and that's been touched on already. And S for systems-based. So we have to be connecting all aspects of society together. And I'll leave you with this quote from a colleague of mine, that if we focus on what is, we are condemned to repeating what was. But if we focus on what is possible, we stand a chance of transcending what is. And so I look forward to the boundary spanning partnerships that this network will foster. And I truly believe that this eco-social contract is an important step in taking the right type of years to transcend what is. And it's a true pleasure to be part of the network. Thank you very much.
Tallulah, that was really inspirational. I shall remember that. Good acronym. Fazia, straight over to you, Shaheen. Fazia from Pathfinders. Fazia.
Hello, all, welcome. Thank you so much for having me here and having the Pathfinders here. Just to tell you quickly about who we are. The Pathfinders is a group of countries, an alliance of countries, civil society groups, multilateral partners that are seeking to identify practical and viable solutions to meet the targets on equitable and inclusive societies. We are very much connecting our issues back to climate and very much welcome joining this network. And it just keeps coming up in multiple ways, not just in who is being most affected by the climate crisis, but who is blocking change, the ways in which elites can both block change on addressing inequality and addressing climate issues. It's part of the same system, of course, but also issues of debt justice, which is an issue that is coming up for several of our countries, who are finding themselves unable to think about addressing spending more on climate adaptation and mitigation when they are not even able to have enough vaccines and having to get in more debt to purchase vaccines. So the myriad of ways in which the climate issue is connecting with inequality and exclusion, that's really where we are really interested in taking forward this partnership. And I just want to say this, there's so much I've agreed with what others have said, but I think it's really important to think about what happens without connecting these issues of economic and social justice and climate justice. And we've seen in, say, protests in Paris with the Yellow Vest protests, that when we don't consider some of the distributional impacts, or when we don't communicate issues of where climate taxes will not make things harder for working class people, we face potential backlash from groups in society, and we also leave ourselves open to being these spaces being co-opted by those that wish to disrupt climate action who use class and class politics as a way to undermine our efforts. So one of the biggest mistakes we can make is to separate inequality from the climate crisis. And very, very pleased to be part of this coalition and taking this work forward. Thank you.
Fawzia, thank you very much. The Pathfinders work is truly inspirational and we're delighted to have you with us. I'm moving us quickly on. Alexander from the University of Sussex. Alexander, welcome.
Hello, and thank you. Thank you for including us in this initiative. My name is Alexander Tenorakis. I'm here with my colleague Andreas Antoniades from the University of Sussex. And we are members of the Sussex Sustainability Research Program here that delivers interdisciplinary research, so that's social, natural, as well as economic sciences and beyond, to help achieve the global sustainability goals. Specifically, the program delivers research to governments, to private sectors, to civil society, focusing on solutions to avoid trade-offs and explore synergies across multiple SDGs. And our work has crossed over 15 low-income and middle-income countries. So in essence, this Sussex Sustainability Research Program is delivering science for the SDGs. And within this program, we are leading, combined with my colleague Andreas, research on this poorly understood relationship between financial crisis, environmental sustainability, and poverty. And we found some interesting results from that. Essentially, with this new eco-social contract, which we are ecstatic to join and be part of, first, our group and our work has shown that meeting the Sustainable Development Goals and transitioning to environmental and social sustainability requires really a paradigm policy shift that goes beyond this narrow focus on the rate of economic growth and economic shocks, which is a key component of this eco-social contract. Our second interrelated aspiration is to work with this network to effect a transformative change, namely the need to break the link between these the damaging swings in production and in consumption and with nature by providing real nature-based solutions with all social groups, so including marginalized communities and those living with and within forests and natural lands. So again, thank you for including us, and I look forward to working with many of you.
Alexander, it's a privilege. I know the work very well, and it's great to have that sense of research backing us up, but also how we communicate, as Kumi challenged us to make sure we're looking at it directly into people's eyes and making things relevant. Okay, I'm going to move straightly to Catherine Strobel from the Bosch Foundation. Catherine, you're very welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm Catherine Strobel, Program Director at the Robert Bosch Foundation. It's a real pleasure to be here launching our joint work on a new eco-social contract. And I'll be very quick, but I'd like to stress 3 reasons for that. And first, and maybe obviously, finding solutions to the multiple crises we're facing is urgent. The consequences of climate change, but also growing inequality and exclusion become increasingly visible and are very real for young people imagining their future. They're very real for people with low incomes. They're very real for people on the front lines in regions already heavily hit by climate change, like the Arctic, that the Bosch Foundation is supporting, and just to name a few. And second, the Bosch Foundation shares the conviction that social and ecological challenges are very closely intertwined. Resolving the climate emergency really requires making fundamental changes in our society. So we need to center people, our needs, lived experience, and all measures we take to make sure that that net zero world we're building is also just and fair. And to that end, the climate ecological movements and the social justice movements, as well as different sectors, must come together as it is happening here in this network. Third, this network aims to apply an intersectional approach. And intersectional does not just mean overlapping, right? It means questioning established power dynamics and making space for the voices of the most marginalized groups in our societies. And this is a challenge for philanthropy, of course, since it is a product of wealth accumulation, but it's also a challenge to take on for academia, public and private sector, as well as movements, to make sure that the changes we make really get to the structural causes of both the ecological and the social crisis. I'm looking forward very much to putting this into practice with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. And I look forward to working with you and going to the roots of these problems, which is really what we're all about, trying to find the roots of these problems and the innovation and creativity that we can create together to imagine the future, as Tallulah was talking about. Okay, straight away to Ruben from Transparency International. Ruben, lovely to have you with us.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here to make a few remarks on behalf of Transparency International. Transparency International, as we all know, is involved in promoting integrity and transparency throughout the world. We're in over 100 chapters in the world. And from the onset, we would like to express our sincere gratitude for the opportunity to join and work with the network, as we believe a new ECHO contract is imperative, especially when it comes to fighting corruption and holding those in power to account. Corruption remains a challenge of significant proportions all over the world, and it will soon define us as a people if not urgently addressed. As Transparency International, we recognize the insidious effect that corruption has on many facets of life, including environment and climate. Therefore, our 2030 strategy has for the first time put a strong emphasis on protecting the environment and climate. And our strategy is informed by research that shows that countries most affected by climate change are the ones with the highest corruption and most vulnerable populations. This has serious implications for the effectiveness of climate change funding. In short, funding which is well intended for climate change activities can easily be diverted to other uses or basically stolen for personal use. So conflict of interest, bribery, nepotism, and embezzlement are endangering climate investment and funding initiatives globally. And these issues are manifested not just in the global south, but in Europe or the US. And without immediate action on climate crisis, a large fraction of the estimated $600 billion annual investment in green and climate initiatives will be stolen, misappropriated, lost or poorly managed, to the extent that climate projects around the world would fail to achieve the necessary impacts. So the current failures and weak governance in climate financing will decide the fate of the beautiful ecosystems around the world. All progress made thus far is threatened if no action is taken to ensure a just transition and protect efforts to combat climate change from being diluted by corruption. We therefore welcome the launch of this network. It should galvanize various interest groups and expertise in order for us to collectively co-create solutions to address impediments like corruption, which would worsen the climate crisis which is on the horizon. Congratulations on the launch, and we look forward to productive engagement. Thank you.
Ruben, it's a privilege to have Transparency International with us to make sure we're keeping a spotlight on the power relationship and corruption. So I go straight away. I think probably one of the things I must work into my moderator is just have first names. And that way we break down some of the barriers between us and we also just speed on through. So Augusti Fernandez, over to you. Welcome very much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the invitation. Hello to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Agustín Fernández de Losada. I'm representing here CIDOB. CIDOB is the Barcelona Center for International Affairs, Barcelona-based think tank specializing in international relations. I'm Senior Research Fellow and Director of the Global Cities Program. The Global Cities Program is a joint initiative between CIDOB and the Barcelona City Council that mainly focus on global cities, on how global cities operate at the global level, how global cities operate in the global scene, how address and negotiate or try to influence global agendas like the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, or the now we are following very closely the COP conversations, etc. We focus our research on the key global challenges that are having an impact in cities, in urban policies, with a very concrete focus on climate transitions, how cities are responding, how developing solutions in the field of the transition to climate neutrality. We also focus on digital transition, technological disruption, and finally on inequalities. From our perspective, just transitions are key, are fundamental to understand the challenges that cities are facing nowadays. We are really pleased to join the network. We will be really happy to share our research, to share our agenda, to share the outputs of our work, and to build together with all the partners of the network to move towards this new social, eco-social contract, where the role of cities must be underlined. The role of cities has to be key. So thanks a lot again for the invitation, and it's going to be a pleasure to follow our joint initiative. Thanks.
Gracie Fernandez, that's fantastic. We shall make sure cities are there, and it's great to have CDOT with us. Finally, I do believe I'm coming to Elsa Marie da Silva. And Elsa, I already owe you an apology because you were supposed to be on first, and I demonstrated that autocues are not idiot-proof by missing you out. So great that you've been patient. Thank you. You have the final say, I believe. So over to you. Welcome very much indeed.
Thank you, and good evening from Mumbai, India. My name is Elsa Marie da Silva, and I'm the founder of Red Dot Foundation. We work on gender equality and in particular, prevention of sexual and gender-based violence. And we do that with a crowd map where we crowdsource anonymous stories, and thereby we bridge the data gap, but also make it more visible, the issue more visible. As you know, it's a global pandemic, the issue of sexual and gender-based violence, and yet we don't really have enough of data to help us design innovative and localized solutions. So I'm really pleased that we are talking about a new eco-social contract, because when we talk about the needs of 50% of the population, often they are left behind, and violence, and the lack of safety is very detrimental, not only for mental, physical, and emotional health, but also it restricts the various opportunities available to the women and girls. So I look forward to working with you very closely on this topic, which is not only a women's problem, but a societal one. And I look forward to building back better with you and collaborating. Thank you for having me. And I'm sorry that we couldn't speak earlier.
Thank you very much indeed. That's absolutely fabulous. Well, I believe we're going to cut the video. So if you've not seen the eco-social contract video yet, please go and have a look, because it's on the site and it really captures some of the stories and pictures we're trying to put forward. But I do believe that we have got time for Kate Donald from the CESR over in New York. So Kate, over to you.
My name is Kate Donald. I'm with the Centre for Economic and Social Rights, an international non-governmental organisation based in New York, but with staff and colleagues in 4 different continents. We are really thrilled to be joining this new network for an eco-social contract. First and foremost, because we firmly believe that working together and coming together across different disciplines, different silos, different geographies, different fields of expertise, different methodologies, different identities is really, really crucial to build the collective counterpower that we need to challenge the status quo and to put forward new ideas, new systems, new processes, new structures that can really put people's human rights and the planet first. Secondly, we ourselves have been working on this collective vision for something that we're calling a rights-based economy. And we're really interested to see with the different partners in this network how we can put human rights at the center of this vision, how human rights can help guide us on the path to the new eco-social contract, and really looking forward to learn from all the different expertise and viewpoints in this network. Thank you.
Kate, that was fabulous. Wow, ladies and gentlemen, we've given you a snapshot of some of the founding members, and it's only been going a matter of a few hours, and we've already got so much interest, and my goodness, wasn't there so much knowledge and wisdom there, but wasn't it stronger together? All of those different nuggets, we build something extraordinary together, and that's what this is about. So let's remember, this is an invitation to collaborate, an invitation to imagine what this new relationship could look like, what this new vision could look like, the processes that bring it about, globally, nationally, in different sectors. We are stronger together. That has to be the challenge, whether or not COP26 delivers what we really hope for and dream for, or we, society, are already thinking, what next? How are we going to make sure that we hold our leaders to account, drive them to more ambition, drive them to address some of the structural inequalities that exist in our societies, see this next decisive decade as an opportunity, not just for climate, but to address those inequalities, to build a caring society where we have a better relationship with each other, between genders, between youth, between ethnicity, between cultures, between business, governments, finance, and those that are in positions of power. But we collectively rejuvenate ourselves with this process and put something really positive forward from this moment. It's an exciting time to be involved in this. We invite you again. What we expect of you is to be an active member, share and learn. We really want you to be a multiplier, to host your own conversations around this term. What does it mean? Let's learn together. Let's develop it together. Be a multiplier. We also want you to be a game changer. We want you to take this vision and really make it a diffusion of ideas, but also a consolidation of ideas, not just of your own organization, but from many other organizations. Let's learn together, collaborate together, and be stronger together and act together. For an example of multiplier, the Green Economy Coalition, we're holding our global meeting on the 29th of November to the 3rd of December. On the second day, on the 30th of November, we shall host a meeting, Code Red for People and Planet, Inequality and the Role of Social Contracts. So we shall bring this conversation into our own networks and bring more and more organizations to this idea. This has been a webinar we have put together by UNRIST. The UNRIST and UNDP have got their own webinar on the 30th of November on the impact of the financial crisis and on the environment, hosted with the Sussex Sustainability Research Centre and UNDP and UNEP. That's another moment of showing how we're multiplying and expanding this. We'll have the UNRIST blog season, The Time Is Now, why we need a new eco-social contract. The GEC has been producing with Kumi, People, Power and Planet. I always get those wrong, Power, People and Planet. And that's another moment where we've really started to engage this conversation, make it bigger, stronger. I have run over, so I am just going to say to you, this is the start. We're very grateful for all of our collaborating team partners, but the invitation is there for you to join us. Let's make this a vision which comes alive. People first, planet, and a new eco-social contract. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. And we shall see you in hopefully January, where we host the first ever meeting, bringing people together, if we can, in real, but also probably virtually. Thank you very much indeed for being with us, and sorry for slightly overrunning. Good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank
you so much.
Thank you.